Big Fat Gay Podcast, where we talk about the things that are weighing on our minds. I'm Dan Oliverio, author, public speaker, and chubby chaser. And for all those who celebrate, happy Valentine's Day. For all those who don't, wow, it's great weather today. It's sort of a blustery day, which is a lovely change here in Los Angeles. And yes, we're having fun. We're having cool vibes.
I'm Trevor Keyson. I'm a super chip, and I'm our resident Cupid. I got my cute little wings and my little sash and my little diaper, and I'm just lying around.
I just think we could spring for a new diaper, Trevor. You've had that same diaper on the past 3 years we've done the Valentine's.
Are you suggesting he does not change his diaper?
And I have my crossbow that I'm going to make people feel love.
My name is Michael Willer. I'm a chubby chaser, and I guess today I'm Cupid's squire. I'm carrying around his arrows and making sure that he's got... I'm not saying that part.
That he's got his quiver.
I was going to say fresh diaper, but let's move on to the last.
Hey, my name's Don. I'm a big chubby guy living here in sunny Hollywood, and today I believe in love.
I believe in love.
Because, damn it, it's Valentine's Day. If you can't believe in a little bit of romance on Valentine's Day, when can you?
Have I mentioned the weather?
Shut up, Dan.
Oh, boy.
So, long-time listeners to the show may know our usual Valentine's Day fare involves a lot of in-depth sexuality, and that's right. It's fold fucking, boys.
Yes.
Fold fucking.
Infamous fold fucking. I feel like that was an eye-opening moment for many people.
Yeah. And I thought, well, what else do you do? Jesus.
Which we're not doing today. We here in LA, we've been through a fire. It's been a bit of a month. So we are relaxing into Shrek 2. Which is its own little romantic excursion.
Yeah.
And if you want to talk, we will be talking about more sex and sexuality and maybe even a little bit of fold fucking later in the year.
Well, the best way to get us talking about sex and fold fucking or anything else that's on your mind is to write us a letter or an email or a voicemail.
Send us a mailbag if there's something specific, and we love mailbags.
So we're not giving up on the sexuality. We're just playing things a little light.
That's right. Year. Don is not giving up on love.
So it's Shrek 2 will be our discussion today. If you haven't watched it yet, you can pause now, go watch it.
That's a great thing about streaming media.
We'll be here.
But until then, we would like to say thank you to our Patreon subscribers for helping us keep the lights on here at work.
Thank you to Big Fig and Bearskin, our partners. Be your own Valentine and get yourself some cute underwear with our promo code Big Fat Gay Pod and save 15%.
Some new boudoir photos.
That's right. Big yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jock straps.
And everybody looks good in red. So 15% off if you use promo code BigFatGayPod. Let's dive into the actual episode.
Yes.
We got the music.
We got a music back, baby.
Jesus God, people.
We're so good at that.
Starting us off in pop culture. It's me. We were doing that before.
Me.
BBC has a story about a wicked plus-size dancer who hopes to inspire others.
And by the way, this is Wicked, the Broadway show, now movie musical.
The Oscar-nominated. They got 20 nominations. They got all the nominations.
Fuck off. 20?
I think so.
They ran out of categories.
I may be just pulling a random.
I think it's 10, actually. I think it's 10, but who's counting?
100 nominations. 1,000 nominations.
Anyway, we're talking about Tegan Brown Winter, who was a plus-size dancer, who was in the movie Wicked as one of the chorus?
Background dancers.
Yeah, background dancers. Yeah. And she talks about her experience making the movie and being part of the production and being able to work with Ariana Grande and all these other dancers and how great of an experience it was. She was basically just spotted. She was just found. Mm-hmm. The casting director.
That girl.
Her. We want her. And got plucked and pulled.
Which is particularly gratifying because she almost gave up dancing because she knew that she had the talent, but every time she went to an audition, they were like, "You're really great. Why don't you lose weight?"
Yeah, it's age old.
It made me think of, I watched the first season of So You Think You Can Dance way back in the day. And the guy who won was this gorgeous young fit guy. And the woman who was the first runner-up was this beautiful young fit woman. And then they did a reunion 10 years later.
Oh.
And she'd gained weight. And they highlighted him and they highlighted all the winners and all the runner-ups from prior seasons. And I kept looking for her, and she was sort of like on the edge, like you couldn't see her, and like
they just
it pissed me off. And so I'm really glad to see her and Dexter kind of come out.
Dexter Mayfield, yeah. And what's really great about this is she talks about being on set, and they were in the studios in England, and then they're in this bubble because it's just such a vast production. And looking over and like, oh my God, I'm not even the only plus size dancer.
There were others too.
Yeah.
I remember when I've seen the movie twice now, and it immediately popped out at me in the opening number of the movie. There's a plus sized man who is singing and dancing in the cast in Munchkinland. And I was just like, whoa, okay. They weren't kidding.
It really is Oz.
Yeah, this is everybody. This is so many different representations, which is just incredible.
Yeah.
And there was this really cool anecdote where she talks about how, because she's in that famous TikTok-y number that everybody in TikTok stole, where they're dancing with the books. And so she's in it, and her friends see her in it. And all of a sudden, she, the fat girl, gets to teach her slim dancer friends that dance. Can you teach us that dance? Can you teach us that dance? Oh my God, it's so cool.
That's such a
Isn't that great?
Yeah. What I love about this is like you get productions, I think, that take on diverse casting for a multitude of reasons.
Yeah.
And sometimes you sort of take what you get. It's like it's something, and sometimes it's like, oh no, they were doing this for like they actually had the right thought process in mind. And in this case, like their whole direction for this dance was like precision and technicality. Like we are going for precise uniform movements, and
The choreographer says this,
yeah, the choreographer. And so it's just cool to watch somebody, I don't even want to say take a chance, because clearly she's a talented dancer.
Yeah, it's not even
you don't want to call it a chance, but just like take a chance the way that other people would look at it.
I think maybe what you're pointing to is when a choreographer thinks precision and technique, well, they're thinking outside in. Right. And it's so refreshing to find that, the casting director, the choreographer, whoever it was like, oh, we can have a diversity of bodies representing this outside in approach.
That the idea that the precision does not require uniformity.
Yes.
In visual.
Yes. Thank you. That's it.
Yeah.
I was so blown away by Wicked on so many different levels.
Yeah.
But just really seeing like the world they created, but still also just having body diversity, because like that's how the world is.
Well, and can I say that's how Oz is? I mean, you've got Munchkinland, you've got the Emerald City, you've got lots of different body types in that land.
I feel
the
like
animals.
It may spell the end for what I've always thought of as the Rockette effect.
Oh,
right?
yeah. What Michael's talking about,
Yeah, dancers need to be uniformed bodies so that you can have uniform lines on stage. So when they move in synchronicity, everything looks exactly the same.
That you have the single organism with no internal diversity.
And as we finally release that a little bit, it actually is freeing to our productions in so many ways.
And it gives opportunity to so many things.
Yeah.
Not just for individual performers, but also the opportunity of, like a movie like Wicked.
Or
That
just
said,
looking differently.
Yeah.
I would absolutely take a cast of all fat dancers for uniformity. I think that'd be awesome.
Would you?
I'm just saying. Look,
That's right. The all-fat production of Nutcracker.
The Chubettes. Moving on.
Yeah.
More all the fat representation. On the Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon, Debra DiGiovanni had her stand-up premiere on late night.
That's great.
I think I've shared a couple things from Debra DiGiovanni on our Instagram stories. Tremendous talent, very funny stand-up. We watched her Tonight Show set she did all together, and then we watched another set, and she definitely cleaned up. And Michael was like, "Oh, she cleaned up her act." It's like, yeah, she definitely did for the Tonight Show. I'm going to share the other clip we watched together. She's just so funny.
She's super funny. I feel like her Tonight Show performance doesn't really do her justice, because part of the reason her act is so funny is because she is so vocally just like blunt, and she
and loud. It is kind of that Chris Farley moment of like, duh!
Yeah, like high energy. She opens with, that she's ADHD, and you're like, oh, I get it.
Oh, yeah. Well, and she's carrying a notebook because she's not going to remember her own routine.
Remember her jokes. I get it. That's me. That's me to a T. Yeah. If you're not sensitive to language, you should totally watch her stand-up act that we'll post. I think The Tonight Show is a great break for her, but the better comedy, like her comedy, I think really represents.
Is online,
It was interesting watching the bit she did on The Tonight Show and then watching a standard bit of hers. I wouldn't say she's super blue, but she's not family fare.
Well, when you said like, oh, she really cleaned up her act, I'm like, She did?
You can't say fuck on the Tonight Show.
Oh, well, that. I mean, yeah. That just means I have to clean up my act for the Tonight Show.
Yeah, I mean, like, she's talking about oral sex in the
Yeah.
She talks about her vagina. Like, there's all kinds
dry
of stuff
vagina, starting fires.
Can I just say, in the spirit of the whole wicked and diversity, it is really interesting. We're seeing so many more neurodivergent comics. Because as you say, like she comes out and she says, I am ADHD. And like you go, okay.
Well, she doesn't just do that. She says, how many other people here are ADHD? And then like some people cheer and she's like, my people. And she kind of immediately creates a bond with some of the audience.
And she talks about a lot of personal stuff that's a lot of fat people deal with, a lot of ADHD people deal with.
She's fat. I feel like that should be evident in that the fact that we're talking about it.
She says it.
Yeah, like it's.
Oh, we never said that.
It's part of her bit. Yeah. Anyway, she's hilarious and amazing, and this is a good break for her.
I love, so in the second set, she goes on a little tangent about a lazy Susan, which I love because it's like, yes, she's brave enough to
call
talk
Susan
about
out
this.
for her laziness.
Why is the lazy Susan called the lazy Susan? Why is Susan so lazy?
Well, because we have a couple lazy Susans, and I always feel weird saying lazy. Like she's doing her best.
It felt like it's such a throwback bit. It was like, is it Seinfeld?
I think of it as even older than that. I think of it as, that observational humor. Like, you ever notice it's called a lady Susan?
It felt Ellen DeGeneres to me. Friendly, open for everyone.
In the opposite delivery style.
Totally opposite delivery style. But
like take all the knobs and flip them the other direction.
But congrats, Debra, on your late night premiere.
The comments, by the way, in the Tonight Show video are fantastic. Everyone's like, "Oh, we've been watching her for years. I'm so happy for her. That she's getting this big break." And yeah,
it's a huge thing for her.
Yes, absolutely. All right. Speaking of huge things,
we have a huge thing. We do.
My God, it's massive.
We are talking about some tips from Fat Watch mainstay Reagan Chastain.
Oh, my personal hero.
Yes.
For those who don't follow her on Substack, you should fucking follow her on Substack.
Yeah.
She is a genius. She is the person who, if you want to find out, like, well, what about this study that says that fat is bad for me? And what about this study that I'm going to die in 10 seconds? I'm like, what about this? And like, she breaks all of this stuff down. And she has come out with a lovely little primer. Trevor, take it away.
It is 3 options when your healthcare is compromised by weight stigma.
So when the doctor is like an asshole.
And refusing to treat you in a variety of different
ways. When they diagnose you as fat.
Yeah.
Which I love. So the first one is the thin person question, which is...
This is brilliant.
What would you recommend for a thin person with a symptom diagnosis situation?
Right. You come in with a sinusitis. They say, wow, have we talked about weight loss surgery? And you say, what would you say to a thin person who came in with a sinus infection?
Right. Yeah.
So there was a point last year, and Dan was with me at the doctor, and the doctor clamped down so hard on my weight being part of it and acting like, well, like if you weren't fat, you wouldn't have this issue. And I wish I had this because it was something where she just like, once she chomped down on that, like there's nothing else we can do because I'm not going to get small enough in any amount of time for this issue to be resolved with you.
Yeah. And so the advice is, and I've quoted this on the podcast before, is you simply pivot to, do thin people ever have this problem? And the answer is always yes.
Yes.
And then it's, well, how would you treat a thin person with this problem?
And she gives different examples for each of these, like different contexts, so you can kind of get a sense of how to rephrase it depending on exactly how it comes up in the first place, depending on what the doctor said or didn't say. So for instance, like if a thinner person lost X pounds or X percentage of their body weight, what would you do? Like if this is what you're suggesting and this is, if a thin person lost, let's say 40% of their body weight, what would your reaction be? How would you handle that?
Yeah.
The second thing she has on the list is note that, please, which is if the doctor says something and, this sounds like bullshit, please put that you said that down in my chart. Please note in my chart that I asked for this diagnostic test and you said no. Yeah,
it typically comes up in testing where they've diagnosed you as fat and therefore the cure is to lose weight. And you're like, well, couldn't it be this? And they're saying, well, it could be that, but why don't you lose weight first and we'll see. Yeah. And you can say, well, if a thin person came in, wouldn't you test for that? And they go, well, of course. Yeah. Great. Can we test for that? And they go, well, no, I think you should lose weight first. Okay. Can you note in my chart that you refused to test me for this or that I asked to be tested and you said no? Can you note it in my chart? And Reagan Chastain also notes you should probably follow up because this is a record that you can see usually in your online portal.
Yeah, I guarantee you some of these doctors will say, oh, sure, I'll put that in.
I'll put that right in. But the point is, often just your saying that is enough to show them that you mean business and they will order the test. very often that completely turns around the conversation. And they're like, okay, so just so we're clear, I asked for it and you're saying no, write that down, please.
I want to go back. You need an MRI. We're going to send you to a zoo for it.
Oh, that.
Right?
Yeah.
And them depending on the fact that you will not follow up on that bullshit recommendation.
Right.
They depend on you not being your own advocate in these situations. And that's what going to check this chart is. You being your own advocate.
I will just sort of tack on to this that being your own advocate in healthcare is already a necessity, like much less that you have to do it just to get around the fact that people are going to make all of these assumptions because you're fat. But like so many of my kind of medical issues over the last couple of years were caused by the fact that I didn't properly advocate for myself. I just kind of went along with what the doctor said, even though it was like, well, but I know I have this other issue over here, but you think it's this. And so I'm just going to put everything else on hold, but I'm pretty sure it's not that. And you just get strung along. And eventually it was like, well, lesson learned. I should have just been a little bit more of an advocate for myself.
Which is hard because guess what? The reason you're seeing the doctor is because you feel under the weather. You feel sick. And so advocating for yourself, it's often helpful to bring someone in. At the point when this was happening to Trevor, my stance was like, okay, we don't need to see this person again. Like there's no reason to advocate here because we want to be out of here.
Yeah.
Right.
Do you think that there would be a professional opportunity for me to be a fat doula, right? To go with fat people to their medical appointments and do what a doula does for a pregnant woman?
I kind of like that.
I mean,
I really like that.
It sounds like some of our brothers and sisters out there may need that.
That is kind of a thing that happens, and I do know some
Reagan
activists in fat community that do that.
Not one-on-one. I mean, she can.
She did that. She talks about that exact thing in this article.
I mean,
but
it is something that people will do. Like, it's not, I don't think I know anyone that is like a fat doula where like you can hire them, but I do know people that have stepped in for other people because it's usually with stuff where it's like they need an MRI and they need someone to like call different hospitals for them.
Which is exactly what Reagan Chastain did for her girlfriend.
Yeah.
So third thing on the list.
Yes, please.
Yes.
That she brings up is informed consent and refusal.
Yeah. So we're all used to informed consent, like they tell you what's going on so you can consent to it. But what we hear a lot less about is informed refusal. And the example given in the article, I love this, is they're saying, okay, step on the scale, because the first thing they do, apparently, you don't exist as a human being unless they know your weight. And so immediately, the first thing that happens when the nurse gets hold of you is they put you on the scale, and you can say, I don't want to.
Yeah.
Except the language for it is a little more formal.
I'm exercising my right of informed refusal of whatever the particular thing is. So stepping on the scale. What are the other options?
I'm also very happy that she puts in here the anticipated... some of the anticipated lies that you'll be presented with to force you onto the scale, such as your insurance requires this.
Yeah. We do it for insurance purposes.
Yeah.
No. Even if the insurance company is collecting data on weight, you can opt out.
Yeah.
She did make a point to say that this is a law in the United States. It may or may not be in your country, so you might want to check on that.
What's a law in the United States?
The right of informed refusal.
Yes. For example, let's say that you have been diagnosed with a terrible disease and you can practice your informed refusal to take treatment. Frequently, if they keep throwing weight loss surgery brochures at you, you can say, I invoke my right of informed refusal. We are not doing that. Stop pitching it.
So I'm back on the thing because Don brought it up about you need to go to the zoo or whatever. Okay. And I would love maybe for Reagan Chastain to like do a deep dive on like the fact that that's not a thing really. Because I just have so many questions about what
how did
this happen? And also like, what are the actual things people can do? And also, like, if the doctor said that to you and you're like, write that down, if the doctor would do that, because it's like, I want you to put in my file that you told me to go to the fucking zoo. And so that other doctors can see, other doctors can see that you said that and acted like it was a thing.
No, the thing is, they know better because almost no doctor will say that. It's usually the nurse who whispers it in your ear as you leave the office, you know.
That is, in fact, what happened to me.
Yeah. No, they never say that to your face. And as Trevor has pointed out, no zoo will take you. Like, even if it were possible, even if there were such a thing as like, I'm just going to go use the machine the elephants use. The liability is just exclusionary.
You have to dress up like an elephant.
If you can fool them.
Well, we're just going into the mud for Shrek 2.
So we watched Shrek. What
it was back in it was 2013 or not 2013.
Oh my god. No.
2023. It was episode 153. Farquaad is coming.
Farquaad is coming. Farquaad.
The vibes are off, and I just was thinking, I'm like, let's go to Shrek 2. Let's revisit that. And I was so glad we did, because there was so much that I didn't remember about this movie.
I want to say this movie has new context when you watch it in 2025.
Oh yeah,
I was watching with completely new eyes.
I was thinking I want to do a double feature of Shrek 2 and The Substance.
Oh.
Well, I should say I really love that we're doing this for our Valentine's Day episode, because it is actually very affirming of both self-love and romantic love.
Very much so.
So this movie picks off where we left the last Shrek, where the titular Shrek and
that's Shrek.
Princess Fiona in her true ogre form are married. We have a little wonderful montage of their honeymoon and moving back into Shrek's house in the swamp together.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lovely little swamp house filled with animals, and it's warm and it's cozy. You know, it's not presented as like the house that everyone would envy, but it's their home.
Yeah.
It's a home.
Yeah.
And then she gets an invitation from her parents, the king and queen of the kingdom of far, far away.
Which is a little odd, can I say, that they've been married, they're living in his swamp house, and he's never met the parents, he's never met the in-laws.
Well, we'd have no movie if they had.
I know, but I'm just like, wow.
For me, this actually triggered like the first very true moment of the movie as a fat man. Of anxiety of meeting
The parents.
my significant other's family and expecting to be judged by them.
Yeah.
I completely understood why he hadn't met her parents.
Yeah. As a chaser, I have lots of stories about this.
Yeah. I was wrong. The movie starts off with Prince Charming going to the tower to rescue Princess Fiona and discovering that she's already been rescued.
And she's on her honeymoon.
Yeah.
Far too late.
So Shrek and Fiona go to Far, Far Away, which is basically Beverly Hills.
Yeah.
I mean, I always got that like as a kid when I watched the movie, but it's different like being an LA boy now.
If you live in LA, it is the Paramount lot melded with Rodeo Drive.
Yeah.
Yep.
The Hollywood sign for good measure.
Yes. I feel like there's a lot of like Hollywood humor in all of the Shrek movies, but I think it is the perfect like body conscious place to set this story of just like, oh, you're going to the most beautiful place in the world.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And the overarching plot, in case you haven't seen it, is the idea that Fiona changed for Shrek physically in this case. Like she literally went from human form during the daytime, could have picked either depending on who she stayed with, chose Shrek, and therefore turned into an ogre ostensibly for him or for love for him. And then
no going back.
And no going back. And then when confronted with like meeting her family, trying to fit in, they're both human. Well,
the parents are.
Yeah.
One of the parents is, but that's the whole thing.
Yeah.
She says, I changed for you. Why can't you accommodate me for this?
And really, it's like the big change is you have to travel to meet my parents. I changed you into an ogre for you, but the onus on you is you have to meet my parents.
So when we get to Far, Far Away, they meet the parents.
Yeah.
The parents are somewhat cold to Shrek because he's not what they picture.
Only a little.
Which creates the friction of the movie of Shrek wants her to choose him, but he's afraid of the parents, and the parents have issues with all that stuff. So to try and find a way to make her happy, he ends up going on a quest with Donkey.
Well, there's a reason for that quest, because the king gets all like, oh, I'm so sorry I treated you so badly. Why don't we meet to go on a hunt tomorrow morning at some ungodly hour?
Yeah.
And Shrek shows up, and it turns out to be
an assassination
attempt.
Literally send him off into the woods to be killed.
Yeah, which is instigated by the king. But that doesn't happen, and instead they go on a quest to...
So he has the card, and it's like, oh, the fairy godmother's card.
Happiness is just a teardrop away.
Right. So they go basically to try and track down a way to make him handsome. A way to change himself to make himself more appealing to her family so that he can
and by extension her, because then he'll fit in better with the family and blah, blah, blah.
And what they stumble into is a potion that he drinks that will make both him and her handsome, or human, let's say handsome humans. And if they kiss, they are permanently stuck back in their sort of socially acceptable, handsome, pretty people forms.
Oh my God, how gross.
Right.
So a little sidebar. So Donkey also drinks the potion and turns into a stallion.
A magical steed.
And when I was watching this, I was like, wait, I'm like, does dragon change?
I'm very curious.
And I looked it up, and they did plan to have dragon appear as like a Pegasus.
Oh, nice.
But I think that it was something that got cut. But like the producers were like, yes, dragon did change. It's just like that was.
We didn't make it into the movie.
All right, where were we? They take the potion. They become beautiful.
They take the potion. There's a whole attempted coup with Prince Charming pretending to be the human Shrek. He is the fairy godmother's son. There was like this arrangement between.
Yeah, they try to pass him off as Shrek to Fiona, who hasn't seen Shrek's
human
true
form
yet.
Yes,
right.
So she thinks Shrek has just been made into an asshole by this thing.
Ultimately, this is a power grab for the throne, right?
Yeah.
Like, he doesn't care about Fiona. He just wants to be king. That's the end.
Yeah.
In the end, they choose.
Love wins out.
Yeah.
Shrek then, and I think there's a very important sequence of things where Fiona is not given a lot to do in this movie. She's kind of a plot point for most of it.
She's rather reactionary.
The only person in the entire movie to ask her what she wants to do is Shrek at the very end. Do you want this? We're both human for 10 more seconds. Do you want to do this and stay this, or do you want to go back to being ogres? And she chooses ogres because that's what she feels like they are, and they fell in love with each other as that, which is a very beautiful, affirming ending.
Yeah, which I think is why I like it so much. It's it's that thing of like, if you could take a pill to make you straight, would you take it? If you take a pill to make yourself thin, would you take it? And the answer was no.
One of the things I thought was so interesting about this, watching it now with modern context, was we're watching a story about a person who takes a magic potion, becomes instantly thin, and then people start treating them better.
Well, that is a huge
familiar.
That was to me the most just gut thing about the movie is Shrek takes the potion, turns handsome.
In the middle of the night, he's asleep when the transformation occurs.
Yeah. And he turns handsome, wakes up, he is handsome. All of a sudden, seemingly out of nowhere, all these women are like glommed onto him.
And just being nice.
Just being nice to him. And then he goes down the street, which of course is Rodeo Drive, and like people are looking at him, smiling at him. And it reminds me so much of what people say that, I feel so much better now that I've lost weight. Yeah, because people don't treat you like shit. Like people actually look at you. People smile at you.
It was hard for me to watch this movie and not see it as Ozempic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This entire thing, a potion that changed their life with minimal effort, but didn't change who they were inside, and so they still had issues they had to deal with. And
that mind fuck, and I this is something that I'm just so fascinated by, is the mind fuck of everybody treats you like this fitness star, but you still feel like the fat kid.
Yep.
Or vice versa. You grew up skinny, you gained weight, but you don't you still behave like the skinny person. So there's like another kind of thing about it. Or if you are the fat guy who's been ignored your entire life and been treated as asexual, and you go to a big boy event and all of a sudden you are the belle of the ball and you don't know how to handle this.
Yeah.
Well, and in Shrek, they did a very good job of establishing everyone who sees him. He and his wife are on their honeymoon. A delivery person comes to bring them their breakfast. They open the door to say hello. The person sees them, screams, and runs.
In the beginning, before they change.
Right? Before they change. And so that's how they set up. That is how people see them and treat them.
And they reinforce it many times. In fact, so much to the point that as a scene that Shrek's not even in, the king sneaks off to the seediest, creepiest, most disturbing tavern called the Poisoned Apple.
Yeah.
And like all of these creepy, disturbing characters like the Headless Horseman and, other ghouls and goblins and everything. And then he says that he's looking to like have an ogre taken care of or whatever he says. And as soon as he says the word ogre, the whole tavern stops and turns at him and gasps, as though that amongst all of them is the worst thing to be.
Well, that's not how I took it. How I took it was like, you want to assassinate an ogre? That's going to be a tough job, and there's only one person who can do it.
Well, they don't react until he says the word ogre. I don't think they heard the setup. Like, I don't think they heard what
maybe.
he said.
It's interpretation. You can take it either way.
At any rate, there's also a later moment where Donkey says, kind of offhandedly, like, Shrek, everyone wants to kill you when they first see you.
Yeah.
Like, it is reinforced many times that just who he is the worst thing you could possibly be.
Yeah. And therefore, what I love about this, and this is how human beings work, therefore he becomes that. Yeah. Like if people's reaction to you is that you're a terrible, scary person, You kind of become that preemptively.
It was the arc of the first movie. We learned who he was because of the way he was treated in the first movie.
Absolutely.
The second movie just continues that.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a point where Fiona and Shrek are arguing about stuff with the dad, and she says, "You're acting like such a," and he's like, "What? An ogre?" Because he hesitates to say that. And I feel like there are points where I've known chub chaser couples where the chaser has kind of thrown the chub's fatness in their face.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And kind of like in the way Fiona's like, you're acting like an ogre.
In that scene, my takeaway was Shrek is in the wrong for how he's behaving, even though it's understandable why he's behaving that way. And Fiona, I think, is supposed to be, quote unquote, right in that argument. But she says that, and you're like, whoa, like, Fiona, what do you do? Like, that's an awful thing to say.
Well, I think her point, though, is that you are behaving like the worst stereotypes of ogres. You are being what people think an ogre is, and I know you to be different. So, stop it.
Well, his response is, I am one.
Yeah, but I can see so many times when, like, in chub chaser relationships and gay straight relationships, where it's like, oh, you're being so gay. And what they mean is you're being all the worst stereotypes.
Like, but I think even if it's like, well, if you would just lose weight, or like if you weren't so fat.
No, but I don't think that's what she's saying in that scene.
No, but I think it's a like.
Well, it kind of is, because what she's saying is you weren't behaving appropriately,
which was true
at dinner, which is true.
If you weren't such an ogre,
and she equates it with him being an ogre, which is not actually why he's behaving that way. He's behaving that way because
I beg to differ. She is talking about the fight they're currently having, not just how he was at dinner, because he was giving as good as it got back and forth with the king. What she's objecting to is his decision by fiat that we are leaving. This is how it is. I am angry. I am in the right. Everybody else is wrong. And it's like, you're behaving like an ogre, dude. This sort of single-minded intolerance in this argument that we are now having. It's like, you're being such a what?
What is she asking him to do in this case?
To take a breath and consider their options rather than storming off, which is what he always does.
But I don't think it's just that. I think she wants him to take a breath and suck it up and play nice with her parents. Like,
well, he won't even entertain the idea of anything else.
Hold on. I'm going to step in here, and I think, at the risk of sounding like the overly enthusiastic peacemaker, you're both right on this one. That is what she wants. I mean, but it's not necessarily what's being expressed in the moment, right? Like, she's trying to get him to stop and breathe.
Yeah.
She's not trying to get him to give in to her desires.
Nope.
But those are her desires, right?
Okay.
Like, I think you're both right.
Yeah.
okay.
That's fair.
I'm on Shrek's side only because it is so clear from the second that they step out of their onion carriage that the dad is just seething. It's weird because like it's like onions. There's so many layers to like analyzing and interpreting stuff, because being an ogre is like, it's a metaphor for fatness. And there's all this stuff with Fiona. We see kind of the glimpses of her childhood from her diary and her toys and everything of, her parents are sending her away and put her in the tower, and she'll be better one day. And then she'll have her prince, and she'll be a beautiful princess, and she'll live happily ever after.
I have two thoughts. So I think one of the brilliant things they did in the writing was that they reveal, I think in a subtle way, they don't make this explicit, but it's implicit in the dad's character that the reason he hates Shrek so much is because he is a frog. He is also other, but he's able to pass. He looks human.
I hadn't considered
closeted.
that. I hadn't considered that, but that is brilliant. Of course it is. Of course it is.
And that's kind of the root.
It's like the politicians who are secretly gay and therefore they're anti-gay.
Yeah. It's the root of his prejudices. He's self-loathing.
He's self-loathing.
Well, and it was what Shrek is living was not an option for him when he was younger, is the way I interpret it too.
That's
that may be reading in a little more than's there.
No, I mean, I just think that's the extension of what Michael's saying.
I also think one of the reasons why Shrek, at least the first two, I don't remember the rest of them, but I think the first two work so well is because the kind of the other that the ogre represents could be a lot of things. We're applying fat. I think maybe if I were to try and get in the writers' heads, I would say racism was probably more on their mind for the way that they wrote it, because some of the particular ways that they talk about his kind of being othered and the way people talk about ogres feels more in that vein, but it's not so clearly defined that you couldn't put yourself in the movie.
Yeah. Any
see
other will
yourself.
fit there. Yeah.
Exactly. And all of the good guys, all of the like large cast of good guy characters are many societal stereotypes for others. Like people who don't fit in, they're the misfits, they're the non-standard people. I think the only good character in the movie that was sort of a normal person was Fiona's mom.
Yeah. Well, it's Julie Andrews.
Yes, well.
No, I mean, she is practically perfect in every way.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. There is the mom, again, the queen, Julie Andrews, is remarkably fine with all of it. Like eerily fine, like unrealistically fine.
Well, she's married to a frog. I mean,
but she
she's
doesn't
gotta
know
be
that. She
somewhere-
doesn't know that.
She did know that actually.
She had to have kissed him in order to.
Because they kissed
It's
by
like-
the
it's-
lily pond.
yeah.
That was their backstory. They don't say he was a frog.
Yeah.
Because I had the same thought when I first I watched it twice, and when I first watched it, I was like, at the end, she's like holding him as a frog, and I was like, wow, she adjusted to that fast. And then I realized, oh no,
That's
knew.
how she met him.
Yeah.
That's how they met.
Yeah.
They went through the same story.
You all
as
are
Shrek
so
and Fiona.
smart.
Yeah, he basically experienced the same change as Fiona,
It's
but
just the difference is that
the other
he
way.
chose normalcy.
He chose normalcy. How
know?
dare you not?
we haven't talked about the fairy godmother yet. And I feel like that is
Yes. Oh my
ripe
God.
for discussion.
Played by Jennifer Saunders, who
Yes.
does an incredible
She's-
job.
As
Great
it-
voice.
Jennifer of
sings all of
Ab
her own songs in it. That character wears an amazing red evening gown at the end. That
Yes.
is just one of the best evening gowns in all of Conti.
She's very busty. I don't know how to feel about this. I think there are two traits about her character that are very relevant to this discussion. First of all, she's maybe the only other quote unquote curvy / not straight size character in the movie besides Shrek and Fiona.
Fairy godmother is dummy thick.
She's thick. She's busty. And they play into that. She gets so upset that she has to break her diet and go
Yeah,
get
they
fast
do a
food.
lot of diet.
They do a lot of
And
diet
so-
jokes. That's true. Yeah.
But you know what? I think that goes to Michael's point that she is trapped in diet culture, in the thin and normalcy culture.
That's what I'm wondering. So like
Yeah,
how
yeah,
like
yeah.
in what way does that, because I feel like that could hit somebody two different ways
Yeah.
watching it. Like on the one hand, you could say, oh, well, she's the bad guy. And the way that she regards weight and diet culture is bad, right? Like that's the bad way to do it. Like we should be more accepting. But then the other way to do it is they're using fat as code for bad. She can't handle her food obsession. And that is a marker for why she's evil. You know?
No, I don't think it's that because your main characters are fat and they're fine with it. And
I get what you're saying, though. I don't.
Because that's a trope, right?
I
think
don't disagree with
But
you.
I think it is going to the trope of Disney's fairy godmother, who is this kind of the fat, grandmotherly.
Yeah.
Like I think it was just because the Shrek movies do so much Disney parody parallel that I think it would be weird if the fairy godmother were thin,
You don't really get the thin. Like I think Pinocchio is the only one where you get a thin,
like the blue fairy.
Fairy
Blue
godmother.
fairy.
Yeah.
No, but she's younger. That's why. Well, no, it's true. All the matriarchs in Disney are fat.
Anyone that is a source of
All the good,
nurturement.
good matriarchs.
Yeah.
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 And if they're evil, they're thin.
Evil matriarchs are usually thin.
That's
I
right.
think Ursula is the only exception.
The only exception. And I think that in this case, I think it's very much what you said in the first place, which is that she's consumed with diet and look what you made me do, maybe break my diet. And now they have to stop at a drive-through because like, oh, I'm so upset. I have to have terrible food. And I think that's just so that is the villain mentality in our world.
Well, it's also interesting. It's not something that's ever directly pointed out, but she is also the fairy godmother who's responsible for granting all of your wishes, your
Yes.
fondest dreams, but only on a superficial level. She has no interest in your happiness. It's the appearance of happiness.
Yeah, and they nail
yeah.
appearance in almost all of her spells and potions.
Yeah.
It's about appearance.
Yeah. And so I thought they did a really good job kind of nailing that. Like she's an illusionist fundamentally.
And she makes money off it.
Yeah.
That is her source of income, is that she charges for these potions. She's got a factory. She mass produces it. Oh, almost like Ozempic or the pharmaceutical
Oh,
companies.
I just got that her billboard is Angeline.
Yes.
Yeah.
I didn't make that
I didn't
connection
see
at
it
first.
for long enough.
Yeah,
It gets smashed so quickly.
For listeners, Angeline was a LA icon who was famous for being famous, and there were billboards of her around LA. Just that's it, Angeline.
yeah. She.
And to be fair, I think somebody else paid for them, but whatever.
Her husband.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just can't believe that just clicked for me.
No, it's really beautiful. The amount of parody and callbacks, and it's just genius writing.
And it's so rich in content that like this many years later, we're watching it 20 years after the fact. We are finding new meanings and new stories in there that didn't exist when this was written.
Yeah.
You know?
I also appreciate, just on a filmmaking level, I was pointing this out last night, that it's a very efficient script. Like every scene and every moment in every scene has a very specific purpose. And if it's a joke, it's usually tied into the plot somehow. It's not usually just a random cutaway joke. And I don't see that in a lot of animated movies.
No, there's less focus on just keeping the story moving than I think animated movies focus more on character development now and story arc than this did. So like with this one, I enjoyed the storytelling, except for one point they fell down for me was the transition of Puss in Boots from villain to hero.
Yeah, I didn't get
is
that.
very just sort of like, okay, I failed to kill you, so now I'm on your side.
Yeah, I didn't get that. And was it because of the sob story he tells?
I
Maybe
think so. You just have to sort of like nod, smile, and say, okay, he's on your side now. And there's no consequences. For it.
It was like Antonio Banderas' sequel deal got inked that day they were animating that. And so, okay, no, he's a hero now. He's a hero now. But you're right. It's like, how did that happen?
I feel like that's kind of a trope, though, where it's like the bad guy to good guy.
No, but that always has to be earned, and where it's not, it's a problem.
We only got 90 minutes, Daniel. We just gotta.
If Mandy Patinkin can make the switch in Princess Bride so smoothly and effortlessly, Puss in Boots could do it too.
I mean, it is there. It's just very, very fast, which is
it?
He didn't do it because he was evil. He did it because he was trying to earn a living. So you kind of get the reason why he has a sad backstory, whatever. And then Shrek, having him in his power, he's captured him. Like Shrek could do whatever he wants with him, chooses not to kill him because he learns that his father-in-law tried to have him killed. Then Puss in Boots goes, oh, you didn't kill me, so I now owe you my life. I have to pay you back.
Okay.
And I'm touched by the fact that this happened to you, and I also just want to help you now. So it was kind of two things.
I kind of missed all that, so I'm glad.
He says it's very fast.
Yeah, it happens in like 2 sentences.
Yeah.
Which is part of your economy of script, but
It may be a little too economical in that point.
The stuff I feel like was also like a short runtime, and I do agree that like was rushed, but I still feel like it was not out of place. Whereas in the stuff like when the investigator like pulls up to the kid who's running and he's like, get in the car. We have an hour left in the movie. Going back to Fairy Godmother, I just love the Fairy Godmother. It is such a fun character and just like deliciously evil, but not in a like hand-wringy way.
I think she's incredibly fun. And I also didn't remember that I think they bring her back in later movies, maybe, but she straight up dies at the end.
She gets turned into bubbles.
I was like, whoa, oh.
I mean,
because it backfires.
Yeah.
Farquaad dies too.
He stays dead, I think.
There was a Shrek Halloween session where like his ghost came back or something, or maybe it's like a ride or something. He comes back as a ghost or something. And I think Fairy Godmother maybe comes back in like the 4th one where there's time travel.
Oh boy.
Revenge of the Fairy Godmother.
Fun. And oh my God, can we talk about Holding Out for a Hero?
And
that was really
that is such a memorable sequence that as soon as it started, I was back to being 14 years old watching that movie. Like that just like
there are so many needle drops in that movie.
Oh yeah,
that are just so like classic songs that I know because of Shrek. And I'm curious. So
I'm hoping we do a third because their use of the immigrant song in the third one is one of my favorite animated sequences of all time.
Yes. Shrek 5 comes out, I think, this year.
Oh, shit.
I don't know if it's this year or next.
26.
Okay, 26 next year. I'm curious to what the future holds for Shrek.
Yeah. Well, we've got a couple more movies to get through before we get there.
We just have to come together as a country, keep it together till the next Shrek comes out.
It'll all be fine if we can make it to Shrek.
Yeah. Happy Valentine's Day.
Happy Valentine's Day.
I guess a tip is if you go out to like Walgreens or CVS or whatever, on the 15th, you can get a bunch of half-price candy.
That's right. Gobble, gobble, gobble.
Get yourself some heart-shaped boxes of chocolate. Enjoy them in your little mud bath while you watch Shrek. That's my tip.
How about a bit?
We're going to go over a couple fairy tales today that have sadly omitted fatness over the years. And we're going to put fatness back into these fairy tales where they belong. All right? So, for example, Rapunzel. Rapunzel, for those of you who don't know, is about a beautiful young woman trapped at the top of a tower who has to throw her hair down to allow her prince to climb her hair up to the top of the tower.
And to rescue her.
Now, what happens if we add fatness to Rapunzel? Is there a good way to do this?
Can you refresh my memory about? So I know the prince climbs her hair and then he gets in the tower. So why isn't he trapped in the tower too?
He can climb her hair down again.
Okay, but then what?
How does
Then
she
she's
get
still
down?
trapped.
How is he trapped? This is like a fox and a chicken and a raft problem.
And the bag of grain.
Yeah.
I don't remember the fairy tale. How does this help anyone?
I'm curious.
Well, she's kept in the tower by an evil stepmother who wants to keep her safe from the world. So with fatness, like I always thought, like one, if the prince were fat, like we don't get a fairy tale, right? That's
They did that in this one of the Simpsons Treehouse of Horror things.
Do you?
And Homer like tries to climb, and she's like, "Oh my God, stop!" And then like, and her hair gets ripped off. Oh. And then he just like
That is a
kicks it
Treehouse
into
of
a
Horror.
bush.
I feel like that's easily solved by creating a hair pulley system. Like, come on.
Step one.
Use your brains, people.
Yeah.
Step one, create a police system. He banishes the wicked stepmother, and he just takes care of fat Rapunzel in the tower.
Wait, I've got it. They're both fat. He is struggling to like make the climb.
Yeah.
So she goes on at the top of the tower, like either descend some stairs or like go down to like.
Oh, you're doing
equal
your
out the
pulley
way-
thing.
to like do
you're
the
doing your goddamn pulley thing.
And so she can like help him ascend.
Oh no, she
by
just needs to
using
go
her
out
own
the
weight.
other window on the other side.
Yeah, to counterbalance.
And then but then they're just
And
stuck
then
on
they-
opposite sides of the tower.
And then they sit on the witch. I don't.
All right, Rapunzel.
We're moving on.
That's as good as I
Rapunzel may
got.
not
That's
have
as
worked.
good as I got.
That's as good as you got. Yeah.
Rapunzel may not have worked. Moving on to our second fairy tale that could use maybe a little bit of fatness is Pinocchio.
Oh yeah, definitely.
In Pinocchio, we have a boy who, when he tells a lie, his nose gets bigger. What happened? Maybe if he got fatter every time he lied, or you know.
You just invented a genre of porn.
Yeah, this is some like a Gainer fan fiction.
Totally.
Pinocchio.
If he got fatter when he lied, because you're supposed to tell the truth, right? That's like his lesson.
I think you and I are thinking the same thing.
Yeah.
So the idea is that he is trapped in thinness by having to tell the truth to everybody. And it becomes untenable because you can't tell the truth to everybody all the time.
Becomes terrible.
Yeah.
Become a burden of existence.
Yeah. The lesson at the end of the movie is he lives with his fatness in order to be a fully functional human being.
And happy. You know, with
That's
friends.
interesting.
Yeah, that's my pitch. That's
Yeah,
my pitch.
that works.
Thank you. Pay me $1 million.
Okay, so Cinderella, one of the reasons why he tracks her down is because her feet are so dainty and teeny that they fit in those perfect little shoes. I do not have dainty or
Yeah.
tiny little feet.
I so have this.
Oh,
I think
Dan,
it's
all
even
right.
just like if like it's just obvious because like she's the only fat woman in the kingdom.
Yeah, no shoes needed.
No, but get this. The wicked stepsisters are trying to find fat suits in order to fit into the dress.
Yep.
Of course, it does beg the question, how does she lose
How
her
did the dress come up? Yeah.
That's the pitch, that it's about the woman fitting into the dress. And either they're all wearing fat suits or women of the kingdom all around the kingdom
It could be
are
a
fattening themselves up to fit into the prince's dress.
I think even if it's just big feet, I like that it's her feet are bigger instead of like them being too like everyone's like cutting off their feet to like fit into the dainty shoe. As another,
You literally just can't fill her shoes, can you?
yeah,
Yes, Trevor is a member of the Big Feet Foot Club.
just I'm imagining like if I had a glass slipper,
Oh my God.
the footman just like putting it on the table like come on. I don't know. I like that it's just like she's got big old feet.
I think it's still hilarious, the idea that like the prince is clearly a chaser in this version, and he's not going to entertain all of the skinny bitches who are trying to fit into that regardless of what size their feet are.
And they're trying to fool him by wearing fat suits.
Yeah.
And they're just unconvincing.
I almost like he shows up and they're like in these like ungainly fat suits trying to fit in the shoes, but he's not even looking at the shoes. He's just looking at them like, no.
I love it.
Sorry.
The shoes are like a distraction.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, where you have to fit in the shoe. That's the shoe.
We'll just, how about this?
But he is looking for the only fat woman in the kingdom.
Yeah.
All right. The last one I picked out is a little bit obscure, but I think most of you will know it. Have any of you heard of the fairy tale, The Princess and the Pea?
Of course.
Yes.
Yeah.
We just saw the musical.
Oh, okay.
And that was my whole pitch for the Wanda the Welder episode when we did Fat Fairy Tales. It was like kind of combining like Princess and the Pea with like Jack and the Beanstalk. And there was like the kingdom of the giants, and the kingdom was built from things stolen from the giants. And that the princess was actually like one of the giant people, but she was abandoned because she was so small. So she is this like giant among the Weans, but she is so small in the giant kingdom, starting off as like everyone's like, oh my God, it's the fat girl. And then she becomes the favorite for this like princess competition. It's kind of like The Bachelor.
Okay. Happily ever after.
Hijinks ensue. I like it.
Yes.
There was more in if you want to hear my full pitch, go to the Wanda the Welder episode.
So, dear listener, do you remember Walter the Welder? Where can they tell us about that, Trevor?
Well, oh, thank God. We're on Blue Sky and Instagram as @BigFatGayPod. We're on Facebook as the Big Fat Gay Podcast. Leave us 5 stars there, or 5 stars and a review on your preferred podcast platform. Support us on Patreon at patreon.com/BigFatGayPod. Or see the articles we talked about at www.bigfatgaypod.com, baby.
Yes, the baby.
Maybe you're finishing up watching Shrek and the movie's ogre, you're relaxing.
Did you do that on purpose?
Yes. But oh no, it's Donkey, so
Watch out.